The three papers together paint an extraordinary picture. We're left questioning whether current recommended levels of nutrients are actually safe. Underdosing may be causing more harm than any purported toxicity risk. And we're also left thinking about the cost-benefit ratios of micronutrient dosing versus antidepressant drug use in pregnancy and postpartum. So we're going to try to get a handle on these three important papers today. Thank you for joining us today, Professor Julia Ruckledge. It's fabulous to have you here, and I can't wait to dive into these papers.
Sure. Okay. So NutriMum was when Haley Bradley came into my office to want to do a PhD with me and wanted to change the world, as so many of my graduate students want to do. I said, well, really the place to start is that where we need to go is look at the effects of micronutrients on symptoms of antenatal depression in pregnancy. And so we set up NutriMum, and NutriMum thought a lot about how do you do this, how do you set up a study like this, how do you, in terms of the design. And we decided we really needed to focus in on the space of the antenatal depression and focus in on that rather than make it overly complicated and think, okay, well, we can look at postpartum and we can look at all these other things. Let's really focus in and do a control trial during the second trimester of pregnancy and see if we can help these women with their symptoms of depression. So we got it through ethics. We got it through MedSafe, where they approved the use of the nutrients at the levels that we were giving them in at, which was above the RDA, but below the upper limit. And this is, for most of the nutrients were below the upper limit. A few of them are above the upper limit, but not dangerous. The upper limit sort of identifies a level where if you go higher than that, you increase the likelihood of toxicity. But they're all of the ULs for nutrients is based on just giving that one nutrient by itself, which is not the way we consume nutrients when we get the nutrients out of our food. So something like zinc, the upper limit is based on preventing a copper deficiency. So if you give zinc with copper, then you end up with having being okay to go above that. So there's some logical reasons why some of the nutrients are being given above the UL. So we studied what we've been studying in my lab for a while now, which is a product called Daily Essential Nutrients. Nothing special, but it just has the full blend of micronutrients that we know that are essential for metabolic function, all kinds of different activities and chemical reactions that are happening in our body. We're completely dependent on the presence of these nutrients. So our placebo arm had had iodine in it at 150 milligrams, and that's because the Ministry of Health states in New Zealand that that's the only recommended nutrient after the first trimester. There are some other nutrients that are stated on the Ministry of Health website, like vitamin D, but they don't actually say you should necessarily supplement with vitamin D. They just say go out and get it, see if you can get it out of the sun, which is kind of sometimes a bit ridiculous because that means that they don't understand that in winter you cannot get vitamin D easily out of the sun, because it's got to do with the angle of the sun. And so you kind of do wonder where in the world do they get their science, but that's an aside. So one of the big things that I observed really early on when we started to recruit was that we had a lot of opposition to this study. And we had a lot of health professionals who were unwilling to refer mums to our study. So and it could have been because they were worried about the nutrient levels. They were really high, so they were concerned about the damage, the effects it might have on the fetus. So there were all these concerns that they had, and fair enough, because this was the first study. So not that I had any reason. There was no reason for us to expect that there should be harm. After all, it got through MedSafe remarkably quickly. It got through the ethics committee remarkably quickly. So they didn't raise any concern. So that meant that we had provided enough justification for using the nutrients at these doses that there was no reason that we should harm the infant. But we decided that we should, it's important to establish, this isn't another thalidomide that we don't want to cause harm. So we ended up collecting a lot of safety data. Correct. Yes. So there's 88 women, and they were randomized 44 to the placebo or 44 to the micronutrients. Now, the placebo also had riboflavin in it, and the riboflavin was important because that the riboflavin can change the color of urine for some people. So that meant we can really confidently say to people, if you do see this happening, it's not a giveaway of what condition you've been randomized to. So we want to make sure that it's completely blind. So the mums were monitored through this 12 weeks. They were either by filling in questionnaires every couple of weeks online, or coming in to the lab and meeting with either a clinical psychology graduate student or a psychologist to just review how that mom was doing in terms of symptoms of depression and other things that are just overall get a sense of her overall life. So that's the trial. That's the setup of the trial. And so should I jump into the outcomes? So we've got a few that I want to highlight. So one of them is that, and you might think that this isn't a good news story for the micronutrients, but I'm not here to either, we're here to just do the research and see if we can find things that can be beneficial for women. And so the first thing that we found was that there was no group difference on the EPDS, the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale, which is the measure we were using to identify if depression was getting better during the trial. And the reason we didn't see any group difference was because 3/4 of the women in either group went into remission. So that meant that their EPDS scores dropped substantially, and also relative to how they came in to the study as well. So they had to have a certain change in their scores in order to meet the criteria for remission. So that, in my opinion, though, is a good news story, because it means that we found a really safe way to help women during pregnancy to reduce their symptoms of depression, which is the care that was being given, and also the expectation that they might be receiving something that might help them. So that's the first thing. But the second one was where we did find a group difference, where the micronutrients were found to be superior to the placebo, was that the Clinical Global Impression Scale, which is used very commonly in these controlled trials, is a measure that identifies whether or not the clinician thinks this person is getting better. Our experience with people is that people quickly forget how they were a month ago. They forget how bad things were. And so they often kind of think that they're just the same. But then when you start talking to them, you realize, that they're sleeping better, or that they're coping better with life, or that they're no longer suicidal, or all these things that can happen, but that they kind of haven't noticed these changes, because sometimes there's kind of a bit slow, or life can still be tough, so they haven't always been able to give it their full attention. That's my experience with monitoring people over clinical trials. So the clinician is able to give a more objective review of how that person is doing. So based on those reviews and those ratings, there were more responders in the micronutrient group compared to the placebo group, either based on the clinician rating, but also based on self-report. So it's something like 69% of the, is that right? Because you had the number. So okay. Of the those who were randomized to the micronutrients identified themselves as much to very much improve, versus 38% of those who had been randomized to the placebo. So that's a pretty substantial difference, although it still highlights that very strong placebo effect that we observed based on those EPDS ratings. So those are the primary outcomes. So I presented these results 2 years ago. Yes, 2 years ago at the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Really good conference to present at. But we've only just gotten NutriMum published. That's how long it took us to get through the revisions, the appeals, the rejections. I mean, it was just endless. It was harder. I didn't think it could get harder than any of the other publications, but it was. Wow. And there was so much opposition to almost everything about it. And yeah, I mean, I could spend an hour on it.
How many journals rejected?
Rejected it.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I mean, I try not to even dwell on that anymore, but it would probably be at least, I think it would have been 6 or 7 before I could sometimes even get it. That's just rejected without review.
Thank you very much for that. That's
Yeah.
important for people to understand.
Yeah, so that's but I aim high in all fairness, and
Yeah.
so the rate of rejection is very high in the ones that I like. So I'll start at the top, started at the Lancet. Um, I got a little bit of a dialogue going with the editor at least, but she rejected it without review because our sample size was lower than what we had stated we were going to recruit. So that's what was allowed her to get out of it very quickly, which is,
Well, Lancet
and you're
decision.
kind of like, well, that's the largest study that's ever been done. And can I just point out that there hasn't been a single study on the medications, but that didn't seem to weigh. Tried the American Journal of Psychiatry, same kind of thing. So kept going, but still, British Journal of Psychiatry Open that's a decent journal, and so it's not that but that was after a very lengthy process, very lengthy of responding to a lot of very interesting queries and
Good on
concerns
you.
and stuff. So we kept going, but it just about killed me. And I mean, I really just hope that this is that when people hear about this, they don't immediately close their mind to it, that they show curiosity and interest, delve into better understanding the role that nutrition plays in our health, better understanding why it is that supplementation seems to be so necessary in the 21st century, understanding that the nutritional environment that we live in now is so much more depleted than it was 100 years ago. So our need for supplementation has gone up. I'm not here to supplement the world. I'm here to make sure that our brains are well nourished. But we live in in an environment, a toxic food environment now, where we are full, our stomachs are full, but our brains are empty. So our brains are not receiving the nutrients. I like to call it hidden brain hunger. It is creeping up on us, and it's evident in the statistics around mental health, poor mental health in our communities. And I just really, really hope that, and I don't have a lot of hope that our government is going to pay attention to this. I've done my best to try to bring this to the attention of our new Minister of Mental Health, but it so far hasn't had any impact. And it just saddens me that we keep thinking that the way to solve the mental health crisis is just training more mental health um, professionals rather than looking upstream to see why it is that we are having so many mental health problems in the first place.